I never thought I'd find myself in this position, sharing my story on a platform like this. My name's Jake, and I'd like to think I'm an average guy. I've got a decent job, a modest house, and a wife, Emily. We'd been married for nearly 6 years when everything started to unravel. At first, everything seemed perfect. We had a good rhythm, shared a circle of friends, and even planned to have kids. But slowly I began noticing little things that didn't sit right with me. A change in the way Emily talked to me, the way she looked at her phone, and those late nights at work that started piling up. I brushed it off at first, attributing it to stress from her job. After all, she was working at a big marketing firm and her boss, Mark, was known for being demanding. But as the months rolled by, those late nights became more frequent, along with random excuses. "I must stay late for a meeting," she'd say, "or I have to catch up on some important project." But her urgency felt off, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. The signs got louder. One evening I came home early from work. I expected to surprise her with a nice dinner, but instead I found her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter with a message from Mark. I didn't mean to snoop, but the name caught my eye and curiosity overpowered my better judgment. I picked it up and saw a series of flirty texts exchanged between them. My heart dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't breathe. The messages weren't just innocent. They were suggestive, full of inside jokes only lovers would share. I confronted her that night, and what followed was surreal. I could hardly muster the words. Stumbling over my disbelief, I asked her directly, "Are you cheating on me with Mark?" She looked up at me, her eyes wide, a mix of fear and anger crossing her face, and then she launched into a story so ridiculous it made my head spin. She claimed they were just friends and that her boss was helping her with her career. She even went as far as to accuse me of being paranoid and controlling. I wanted to tear my hair out, but I kept it. Together, her reactions were further fueled by her defensiveness. I'd never seen that side of her. It was as if I was talking to a stranger. She painted herself as the victim of my accusations, insisting that I didn't trust her enough. It was infuriating. The emotional roller coaster I was on at that moment was dizzying. I felt anger boiling in my veins, mixed with this raw, gnawing pain that sat heavy in my chest. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had betrayed me in a way I never anticipated. As the days passed, the situation became unbearable. I was consumed by confusion and heartache. The initial shock morphed into a dark cloud of sadness that followed me everywhere. How could she do this? How could I have been so blind? I tried to talk it out, but every time I brought it up, she would deflect, twist the narrative, and send me back into a spiral of doubts. I felt like a fool. A fool for believing in our vows, a fool for trusting her, and most importantly, a fool for letting my love blind me to the truth. Each night my heart ached a little harder and my mind raced with thoughts of betrayal. The weight of her lies pushed down on me, and I wondered how I'd ever be able to move forward from this. I felt trapped in a cage of my own emotions. But then something shifted. The anger in me started to simmer, and I began to think about what I wanted. I didn't want to stay in a marriage built on deceit. I wanted more for myself. I realized I deserved better. With every ounce of my being, I decided it was time to take control. I would not allow myself to be a victim of her choices any longer. I started plotting a way to not only escape this heartache, but to rise from the ashes of betrayal. My journey toward revenge began here, and it was only the beginning. I'd show her that I could thrive without her, that I could turn this heartbreak into something powerful. The thought of building my own empire filled me with a newfound sense of purpose. What happened next would change everything. With my mind made up, the first step was to get my finances in order. Emily had always managed most of our money, which was a mistake I'd made in my naivete. I needed to know exactly where we stood before I made any drastic moves. I spent late nights after work poring over our bank statements and meticulously checking our joint accounts. My goal was to find a way to extract myself from this situation with minimal damage. One evening, while Emily was out, I dug into her phone again. This time I was looking for something concrete, anything that could serve as evidence of her betrayal. It felt wrong to invade her privacy, but I justified it with the pain she had caused me. I found more messages from Mark. The way they spoke to each other was intimate, filled with emojis and references to their secret dates. The anger surged anew. The betrayal felt fresh, and my heart raced as I contemplated how best to proceed. I decided to reach out to a few old friends who had experience in the business world. I hadn't connected with them in a while, but now it felt like an advantageous moment. They were all supportive, and I shared my ambitions with them, my desire to start my own company. They encouraged me, offering advice on the logistics of launching a small business, which I had never considered before. It was exhilarating to think that I could channel my heartbreak into something productive. As I made plans for my new venture, I started to envision what my life would look like without Emily dragging me down. I had a passion for technology and innovation, and the thought of creating a startup that would revolutionize the industry excited me. I spent every free moment researching, networking, and outlining my ideas. The more I worked, the more my anger transformed into motivation. But I also had to think about Emily and how I would confront her again. I needed to be strategic. I envisioned her reaction when she would realize that I had taken control of my life. I wanted to make sure she understood the implications of her actions and how they had empowered me to take a new direction. As weeks passed, my business plan began to take shape. I networked with potential investors, smaller yet influential players in the tech industry who could relate to my story of betrayal. I pitched my ideas, fueled by the emotional turmoil I had been through. Each rejection I faced stung, but I pushed through, determined to prove to myself that I was more than a man wronged. The moment of confrontation was approaching, and I felt a mixture of dread and excitement. I spent hours rehearsing what I would say to Emily when the time came. I wanted to make it clear that I wouldn't be her safety net anymore. I knew she expected me to falter, to crumble under the weight of her betrayal, but I was going to surprise her. Then came the defining moment. One night, after a long day of meetings and planning, I came home to find Emily sitting on the couch, visibly upset. She had been crying. Maybe her guilt was finally getting to her, or perhaps she was simply missing the husband who had been emotionally absent. I sat down calmly, taking a deep breath as I prepared to unveil my plan. "We need to talk," I said, and she nodded, wiping her eyes, her demeanor suddenly serious. "I know what you've been doing," I started, the words spilling out with a confidence I didn't feel. "And I know you think I'm going to sit here and let you walk all over me, but you're wrong. I've spent too long being the fool." Her eyes widened, and I could see the panic flicker across her face. "Jake, save it," I interrupted. "I don't want to hear your excuses anymore. I've found out everything. I know about you and Mark. I've seen the messages, the lies. You've turned our marriage into a joke." For a moment, she looked stunned. "You don't understand. I was trying to make things better for us," she exclaimed, desperation creeping into her voice. "Better? You made a choice, Emily. You chose to cheat. Don't twist this around on me." My voice rose, filled with indignation. "And while you've been out playing house with your boss, I've been planning my own future. I'm starting my own company, and it's going to be a success." Her expression shifted from shock to disbelief, then to a twisted sense of anger. "You think you can just walk away from me? What about everything we built together?" I leaned forward, my tone low but firm. "You built that with lies, and I won't be part of it anymore. I deserve better, and you've pushed me to be better. I'm not going to be the man you used to manipulate anymore." The confrontation felt electrifying. I was finally reclaiming my power, and I could see the fragility in her composure. She was losing control, and I was gaining momentum. As I walked away from that conversation, I felt a surge of adrenaline course through me. This was a turning point. I was no longer the heartbroken husband begging for attention. I was a man ready to rise from the ashes of betrayal and build something extraordinary. And I was determined to show her just how wrong she was to underestimate me. After that confrontation, I felt a sense of liberation as I focused entirely on my new venture. The emotional turmoil of my marriage had transformed into a burning drive to succeed. I dove into my startup with a relentless enthusiasm, pouring my heart and soul into every detail of my business plan. I was no longer just Jake, the husband. I was Jake, the entrepreneur. I spent countless hours networking, attending business seminars, and meeting with potential investors. It felt like I was stepping into an entirely new world, one where I had the power to dictate my own narrative. I found a small office space to rent, just enough to get started. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of activity, brainstorming sessions, late nights, and endless cups of coffee. I was fueled by a mix of ambition and the desire to prove myself. Every time I thought about Emily and her betrayal, I felt that fire reignite within me. I started to build a team of like-minded individuals who shared my vision. There was Sarah, a brilliant coder with a knack for problem-solving, and Mike, a marketing guru who could sell ice to Eskimos. These people became my new support system. They were passionate and driven, and each small victory we achieved together felt like a personal triumph. I realized that I was surrounded by individuals who believed in my vision, and that validation was powerful. But as I poured my energy into this new life, I was still grappling with the aftermath of my marriage. Emily began to act differently after our confrontation. She was desperate to reconnect, and her attempts at rekindling our relationship became increasingly obvious and, quite frankly, a bit pathetic. She would send me long texts, asking how my new business was going, how she missed the old us, and even trying to manipulate the situation by mentioning how alone she felt. I used to feel guilty about her loneliness, but now it was just a reminder of how far I had come. I was finding my strength, while she was only revealing her insecurity. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction in knowing that I was moving on without her. I started to enjoy my independence, the way it felt to wake up each morning with a sense of purpose and determination that had been absent for so long. One night, after a particularly long day of meetings, I decided to stop by a nearby bar to unwind. I was surprised to see Mark there, sitting at the bar, laughing and clearly enjoying himself. I felt a rush of emotions at the sight of him, but I was no longer the angry husband looking for revenge. Instead, I was a man who had found his footing again. I approached him, fueled more by curiosity than rage. "Mark," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "We need to talk, just the two of us." He turned to me, his expression shifting from surprise to an arrogant smirk. "What's there to talk about, Jake? You know Emily and I are—" "Don't play coy with me," I interrupted. "I'm not here to fight, I'm here to make something clear. Whatever you think you have with her, it's built on lies and deceit, just like my marriage was. I've moved on and I'm building something amazing. You'll see it soon enough." His laughter faded and I could see the flicker of concern in his eyes. "You think you can just take her from me?" He sneered, his bravado reduced to defensiveness. "She's not mine to take, Mark, but you've made your choice and so have I. I'll be successful with or without her, and you'll wish you never crossed me." With that, I turned on my heel and walked away. I felt a sense of satisfaction in standing up to him, in confronting the man who had played a role in my heartbreak. I was reclaiming my narrative, and it felt exhilarating. As the weeks turned into months, my startup began to gain traction. We launched our first product, a tech solution that catered to small businesses looking to streamline their processes. The reception was better than I could have hoped for. Positive feedback began rolling in, and soon, I was approached by several investors who were interested in funding our growth. Each success fueled my determination even further, but Emily was still lurking in the background, her attempts to reach out becoming more frequent. One evening she showed up at my office unannounced, her expression a mixture of longing and desperation. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. I was taken aback. "What do you want, Emily?" I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I want to apologize," she said, her eyes welling with tears. "I know I messed up and I want to fix things. I miss you, I miss us." I sighed, feeling a mix of sympathy and anger wash over me. "You had your chance, Emily. You made your choices, and now I'm making mine. I can't just forget everything you did. I'm moving forward with my life, and I won't let you drag me back." Her face fell, and for a moment I saw the woman I once loved beneath the pain and regret. But I quickly reminded myself that this wasn't about her. It was about my journey, my healing, and my newfound strength. I walked away from that encounter filled with a sense of clarity. I was no longer the man who would let someone else run his life. I was Jake, the entrepreneur, and I was ready to embrace whatever this new chapter had in store for me. The road ahead was filled with challenges, but I was determined to face them head-on. Little did I know, the real test of my resolve was just around the corner. As my startup continued to grow, the momentum was intoxicating. Each day brought new challenges, but it also brought new opportunities. I was getting used to the hustle, the late nights, and the thrill of seeing my vision come to life. The workspace buzzed with energy, and I found myself surrounded by people who shared my passion. We celebrated small victories together, and it was exhilarating to feel like I was part of something bigger than myself. But just when I thought I had everything figured out, the past came crashing back in an unexpected way. One Friday afternoon, while preparing for a major pitch to potential investors, I received a call from Mike, my marketing guy. He had just learned that Emily had been approaching some of our potential clients, trying to convince them not to work with us. My blood boiled. I couldn't believe it. After everything, she was still trying to sabotage me. I felt the familiar sting of betrayal wash over me, but now it fueled my determination instead of making me weak. I wanted to confront her again, but I had to think strategically. I wasn't the same man I had been months ago. I was stronger now, and I needed to act accordingly. I arranged a meeting with Mike and Sarah to discuss this new development, and we devised a plan. We would begin reaching out to those clients Emily had approached and reassure them of our commitment to quality and integrity. But more importantly, we decided to turn this situation into a public relations opportunity. If Emily was going to spread rumors, we would show our potential clients that we were transparent and trustworthy. The pitch day arrived, and I felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. I had spent weeks preparing, and I knew I had to present myself as confident and capable. As I walked into the conference room filled with potential investors, the weight of my past began to fade. I focused on delivering my vision and showcasing the hard work my team had put into the company. The presentation went better than I could have hoped for. Investors were genuinely impressed, asking insightful questions and engaging with our mission. I felt a sense of pride swell within me as I realized just how far I had come. This was my moment to shine, and I was determined to make the most of it. After the pitch, as I enjoyed a celebratory drink with my team, I received a call that changed everything. It was from an investor I had met during the pitch, someone with serious connections in the industry. "Jake, I loved your presentation," he began. "I want to discuss a potential partnership that could really elevate your company. Can we meet next week?" My heart raced. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for, and it felt like a validation of all my hard work. I hung up the phone with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. But little did I know, Emily wasn't finished yet. A few days later, I found myself at a networking event, excited to connect with industry leaders and potential collaborators. As I mingled, I spotted Emily across the room, chatting with a group of people. My stomach dropped. She looked out of place, yet somehow confident, as if she belonged there. I could feel a mix of anger and disbelief rise within me. Why was she here? Didn't she understand that this was my new life, one I had fought so hard to create? I decided to ignore her and focus on my conversations, but I couldn't help but overhear snippets of her discussions. She was pitching herself as an expert in marketing, leveraging her previous experience at her firm, and subtly trying to undermine the reputation of my company. It was maddening to hear her spin her story, presenting herself as the victim who was wronged by me. When our eyes finally met, I felt a surge of emotions, anger, sadness, and a strange sense of pity. She approached me, a smile plastered on her face. "Jake, fancy seeing you here," she said, her tone too cheerful to be genuine. "Cut the act, Emily. We both know why you're here," I replied, my voice low but firm. She feigned innocence. "I just wanted to support the local businesses. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? You're trying to sabotage me, aren't you?" I shot back, not willing to let her manipulate the conversation. You think you can come back into my life and mess with my success. This is my time and I won't let you ruin it. Her smile faltered, and for a second I saw the vulnerability behind her facade. I just want us to be okay again, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm not going back to that version of us, Emily. I deserve better and you know it. You made your choice when you decided to cheat. You're not welcome in my world anymore. My heart raced, not from fear but from the thrill of standing my ground. As she walked away, I felt a mix of relief and triumph. I wasn't going to let her disrupt my life any longer. This was my journey and I was ready to embrace every moment of it. The next week I met with the investor who had expressed interest after my pitch. As we discussed potential partnerships, I realized how far I had come, not just in business but in my personal growth. I was no longer the man chained to the past. I was creating my future and it was bright. The investor decided to come on board, and with his resources, my startup began to expand rapidly. We were on the brink of something big and the momentum was exhilarating. I felt unstoppable, but in the back of my mind I knew that Emily wasn't finished. I had to stay vigilant. I had built something worth fighting for and I wasn't going to let her take it away from me. This was my moment to rise and I was determined to make the most of it, no matter the cost. As I prepared for the next chapter, I understood that the real test lay ahead. I had to protect what I had built, both in business and in my newfound sense of self. And I was ready for whatever challenges that might bring my way. With the new partnership secured and my startup gaining traction, life took on a rhythm I had never imagined possible just months prior. The excitement of seeing my vision materialize was intoxicating, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was steering my own ship. My days were filled with strategic meetings, product development, and brainstorming sessions. Every success, no matter how small, reinforced my belief that I was on the right path. However, Emily's presence loomed like a shadow in the background. I had expected her to back off after our last confrontation, but the opposite happened. She seemed to intensify her efforts to stay relevant in my life, appearing at events, trying to network, and even reaching out to my team members, claiming to offer help or insights. One afternoon, I received a call from Sarah, my lead coder. "Jake, I need to talk to you about something," she said, her tone serious. "I ran into Emily at a conference yesterday, and she was asking about our projects. I don't like the vibe she was giving off. It felt like she was trying to dig for information." My stomach twisted. What exactly did she say? She was very interested in your latest product launch and asked if we had any upcoming plans that we hadn't announced yet. I told her I couldn't share anything without your consent, but it seemed like she was fishing for details. This was exactly what I had feared. Emily wasn't satisfied with just trying to sabotage my reputation. She was now actively trying to undermine my business. I felt anger boiling beneath the surface. I needed to confront her once again, but this time, I had to be strategic and calculated. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into a confrontation that played into her hands. That evening, I decided to invite Mike and Sarah to my office for an impromptu meeting. I wanted to brainstorm ways to protect our intellectual property and ensure that Emily couldn't undermine us any further. "We need to keep everything under wraps," I said, laying out the plans for our next product line. "Any leaks could be catastrophic for us." "Agreed," Mike said, nodding. "We should also consider how we present ourselves in public to minimize any potential influence she might have." We spent hours strategizing, drafting an approach that would keep our company's direction discreet while we ramped up our marketing efforts. It felt empowering to pivot from being reactive to proactive. We decided to tighten our internal communications and establish a clear boundary between our personal and professional lives. But as the days passed, I found it increasingly difficult to shake the feeling of dread that Emily's interference instilled in me. Every time my phone buzzed, a small part of me braced for bad news, an unfounded rumor or a deceptive maneuver that could set me back. I needed to confront her but wanted to do so in a way that wouldn't leave me vulnerable. Finally, I decided to leverage social media to my advantage. I crafted a post detailing our upcoming product launch, A bold announcement designed not just to excite our customers, but to stake a claim in the market and ward off any potential gossip. "We're taking the industry by storm, and I couldn't be more proud of my team," I wrote, adding a few teasers about our innovations. When I hit post, I felt a rush of adrenaline. It was a decisive move, and I hoped it would silence any chatter. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and I reveled in the support from clients and potential partners. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let Emily dull my shine. But just when I thought I had regained control, something unexpected happened. I received a message from Mark, Emily's boss. The message was vague but laced with veiled threats. "Jake, we need to talk. I think you may be crossing some lines with your recent announcements. Let's discuss this before it escalates." My heart raced. How had he gotten my number? Surely Emily had a hand in this. I felt like I was being cornered, and anger surged within me. I knew I had to address this head-on. I replied promptly, setting up a meeting. "I'm not interested in games, Mark. You know exactly what you've been doing, and I won't be intimidated anymore. Let's meet." The next day, we arranged to meet at a coffee shop. I arrived early, my mind racing with thoughts of how I would handle this confrontation. I wanted to show him that I'd risen above the petty drama of my past and was now a force to be reckoned with. When Mark arrived, I could see the arrogance in his stride. He approached me with a smug expression that quickly shifted to irritation as we sat down. "Jake, I think you're making a mistake by announcing your product launch without consulting me first. Emily is still my employee, and I won't have you dragging her name through the mud." I leaned forward, a calmness settling over me. "This isn't about Emily, Mark. This is about business. If she's trying to interfere with my plans, then it's between you and me. I won't let her or you manipulate me any further. My company is thriving, and I won't let anyone jeopardize its future." His eyes narrowed, and I could sense his frustration. "You think you're untouchable, don't you? Just remember, I have connections, and I know things about you that could ruin you." I smirked, feeling more confident than ever. "Do your worst, Mark. I'm not afraid anymore. I've built this from the ground up, and I'm not going to let you or anyone else take that from me." We parted ways, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had faced both Mark and Emily, standing my ground and asserting my independence. Their manipulations no longer had power over me. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat on my balcony, watching the sunset. I had fought hard to reclaim my life and establish my business, and I knew I was on the cusp of something great. As I reflected on the journey, I felt a mix of sadness for what I had lost and exhilaration for what lay ahead. But the nagging feeling that Emily wasn't done yet crept back into my mind. I had to remain vigilant. The road to success was rarely smooth. I was ready for the final showdown, whatever that may entail. And as I contemplated the future, one thing became clear. I would fight for what I had built, and I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The stakes were higher than ever, and I was prepared to face them head-on. As the days turned into weeks, I felt the tension between Emily, Mark, and myself reach a boiling point. Emily's attempts to infiltrate my life had escalated, and I realized that ignoring her was no longer a viable option. It was time to take definitive action. I needed to confront her one last time, not just for my sake, but for the future of my business and my own peace of mind. I reached out to her and suggested we meet. To my surprise, she agreed. When we sat down at a small cafe, I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She looked different, more vulnerable. It occurred to me that perhaps she was beginning to realize the consequences of her actions, but I wasn't here to comfort her. "Emily," I began, my tone firm yet measured, "this has gone far enough. Your behavior is affecting my business and my life. If you're still trying to sabotage me, I won't stand for it." She crossed her arms defensively. "I'm not trying to sabotage you, Jake. I just wanted to be part of your life again. You're shutting me out completely. By trying to undermine my success, that's not how this works. You can't just expect me to forget everything you've done. You made your choice when you decided to cheat. You had a chance to make things right, and you blew it." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I wasn't thinking straight. I was scared of losing you, and I didn't know how to handle my feelings. I thought if I could get close to your world again, it would fix everything." "It's not that simple," I replied, feeling a mixture of anger and pity. "What you're doing is toxic, and I won't let it affect my life or my business anymore. I've worked too hard to let you back in." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation hanging between us. I could see the realization dawning on her, and it hit me that she wasn't just fighting for me. She was fighting for her own sense of identity and purpose, but I couldn't be her anchor anymore. "Jake," she said finally, her voice trembling, "I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you, I just don't know how to let go." "It's time you do," I replied, my voice steady. "We both need to move on. I'm building a life without you, and I hope one day you can find your own." With that, I stood up and walked away. I felt a mix of sadness and liberation. That chapter of my life was finally closing, and I was ready to embrace what lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, my startup began to flourish even more. The partnership I had secured proved invaluable, and we were rapidly expanding our reach. I was gaining recognition in the industry, and it felt amazing to see my hard work paying off. I poured myself into my business, using every ounce of my energy to push forward. But I also took time for myself. I began to explore hobbies I had long neglected, like hiking and photography. I wanted to rediscover who I was outside of the pain Emily had caused me. I learned to enjoy my own company and the freedom that came with it. It wasn't long before I met someone new, a woman named Mia, a fellow entrepreneur who shared my passion for innovation and growth. Our chemistry was undeniable, and as we spent more time together, I felt a sense of joy that reminded me of the early days with Emily, but without the shadows of betrayal. Mia encouraged me to continue pursuing my dreams, and she believed in me as much as I believed in myself. I realized that this was the kind of relationship I had always wanted, one built on trust, respect, and mutual support. She inspired me to be better, and I was grateful for the fresh start. Looking back, I realized that the betrayal had served a purpose. It propelled me into a journey of self-discovery and growth that I may not have embarked on otherwise. I learned to stand up for myself, to fight for my dreams, and to cherish the relationships that truly mattered. As I stood in my new office, looking out at the city skyline, I took a moment to reflect. I had transformed my pain into power, and I was building a future I could be proud of. If there's one thing I learned from this experience, it's that life can throw unexpected challenges our way, but it's how we respond that defines us. I turned my heartbreak into a driving force, and I emerged stronger, more resilient, and ready to take on the world. So, to anyone reading this who may find themselves in a similar situation, don't let betrayal define you. Use it as fuel to ignite your passion, to reach for your dreams, and to become the person you've always wanted to be. The road may be tough, but the rewards are beyond worth it. I was ready for whatever came next, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held.